You really want to try out Linux, but you're not really sure where to start. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to install a Linux distribution alongside Windows. You may be thinking, why would we want to do it this way? Why would we not just use a VM to try out Linux? And you can do that, but there's some downsides to doing that. Generally, in a VM, you need an external GPU to have solid performance. Linux does much better at this than Windows, but it's still not quite the same as you're going to get on bare metal. The other thing about using a VM is it's much harder to do things like game. Again, unless you're passing through a graphics card, it's just not going to be the same. So today we're going to install Linux Mint. I usually recommend Linux Mint or Pop! OS for people that are new to Linux. Originally I was going to suggest Pop! OS, but then I realized you can't easily install that alongside Windows. With Linux Mint, we should be able to install that alongside Windows. It's going to give you a similar workflow to Windows, and you'll be able to kind of compare the two and see if Linux might be the right fit for you. So the first thing we need to do is to start downloading the Linux Mint ISO. So if you just type in Linux Mint into the search, if I could not add an extra T, that would help. And you'll see this linuxmint.com here. And we want to click download. And you want probably the Cinnamon edition. You could go with the Mate edition if you want to have a little bit of a different setup. But Linux Mint Cinnamon edition is really good. That's what I got started on Linux with. And it's probably going to be the closest thing to Windows. If your computer's running Windows okay, then you should be good. So down here, you can look at the integrity and all that. You want to download from Amir. Pick one that is close to you. I'm going to pick this one right here, and it's going to start downloading. While we're waiting on that, the next thing you want to do is you want to go download Rufus so that we can go and actually burn this ISO. So if I search for Rufus, and I believe it's right here, Rufus IEN. You want to scroll down a little bit to this download section. You'll find Rufus 4.0. You can just click this one right here. I have already downloaded this, so I'm not going to download it again, but it's a really fast download. Then you just need to wait for Linux Mint to download. All right, now that that's finished, we'll just go to our folder here. We have Rufus and we have our Linux Mint ISO. So if I click on Rufus, it's going to ask me if I want to allow this app to make changes. Click yes. Make sure to select the correct device up here. If you have multiple external storage devices connected, multiple USB sticks, etc., make sure you pick the right one. I only have one connected, so I am good there. So I want to select the ISO. It's going to pick this Linux Mint 21 in my downloads folder. And then I'm going to click open, and that should all be fine. This shouldn't matter. I will put GPT just in case it does. I don't think it does. And then Linux Mint, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, I think we should be good with these settings. So let's start this. So what this is saying is that there's two ways that Rufus can burn this file. We're going to try ISO mode first and see if this works. I have not used Rufus in a long time since I've just been mostly using Linux. But we'll try ISO mode. If we need to come back and use DD, we will. So in the Linux world, it's going to ask us, warning, all your data will be deleted. That's fine. And important, the drive contains multiple partitions. That's fine. So in the Linux world, DD is also known as disk destroyer because it will overwrite whatever disk you tell it to. And Linux is it treats the user with a lot of responsibility. So if you DD the wrong drive, you can wipe out a drive that you don't intend to. So you have to be really careful when you're running a command like DD. That is not something I generally recommend most people do. That's something, you get to the point where you're comfortable doing that. There are obviously other ways to do that beyond just a terminal command. Just wait for this to finish. It should be pretty quick here. I think it's been about a minute total for me. All right, and now that that's done, we should be able to hit close. We can go ahead. We don't need to eject anything. If you want to be extra careful, you can go and do something like run a verify integrity and authenticity. You can do that if you want to. I am okay with that because I burn these all the time, and I'll notice if something's wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out and close this out, and then we'll go on and shut down. We'll restart, and I am going to then start pressing F7 because F7 is the boot menu on my machine. And so make sure you press the key that you need to get to the boot menu on your machine. And then I'm going to pick the SanDisk. This is the USB stick that I have this on. And you'll get a screen that looks like this. So I'm just going to go on and start up this Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon 64-bit. If you get to just a black screen, reboot, and then pick the compatibility mode. Sometimes that can happen with NVIDIA on Linux, but most of the time it should be okay in the live environment. But if not, try this compatibility mode second. There are other things you can do, but that gets into a little bit more complex stuff, unfortunately, and you have to come in and make another change. Let's try this one. All right, and we are in. So something really nice about Linux is you can actually go and try this out. You can poke around, you can see what kind of applications are set up on this USB stick, because these are the applications that are going to be installed for you. So you can see here, calculator, we have image viewer, Redshift, screenshot, and things like driver manager, which I'll show you really quickly here because this will be useful once you get there. Actually, I can't see it. So if you need to install NVIDIA drivers, after you get this installed, you want to open this driver manager because that's what should look for these. I don't have an NVIDIA card, so I can't actually run this, but that will actually look for the NVIDIA drivers and help you out with that. One important thing down here on the left is let me hide my camera. So down here on the right, you can actually go and look for your Wi-Fi and make sure that Wi-Fi is working. I'm going to turn Wi-Fi off because I am connected via hardline for the moment. But it's important that you go and check Wi-Fi. Sometimes you can have weird Wi-Fi chipset, especially on a laptop. So to just make sure Wi-Fi is working, it would actually be good to connect to your network so that when you run this install, it can pull down any fresh packages. If you're ready to actually run the install, we come up here and double click Install Linux Mint, and it will start bringing this up here. So you select your language, and this is a really quick install, by the way. You select your keyboard layout. So if it's anything beyond English US, change it to what it needs to be. And here's where it's going to ask you if you want to install multimedia codecs. You want to install these. I am not going to, but you want to check this box and hit continue. I am not going to just for the sake of time. I believe if you have an NVIDIA card, it may also have something here about third-party drivers, or it may even specifically call out NVIDIA. If it does, make sure to install that as well, because that is going to be really helpful. But I know used to be when I would be installing these, you would see install media codecs, and then you would see install third-party drivers. So I'm pretty sure you'll see another option here. But again, I would install both if you have the option to do so. So I've clicked continue and I bring it up here. Here we go. So here's where you want to make sure you pick the right thing here. So you can pick install Linux Mint alongside Windows Boot Manager, or you can erase the disk and install Linux Mint. And then you can also do something else. If you know how to partition hard drives, you could do something else and do whatever you need to do. If you want to erase the disk entirely and just install Linux, you can do that. If this is a secondary PC that you're really wanting to use Linux on, then this is the option you want. But if you're just wanting to try Linux and you want to install it alongside Windows, you want this first option here. And click continue. It's going to ask you what drive you want to use. If you have multiple drives, it may be a good idea to have one specifically set up for Linux. I do not have one handy. I meant to install one and I just forgot, but it's all right. And so it's going to try to divide this up evenly. Depending on how much space you want to give to one or the other, you can adjust this. I'm just going to leave it around the middle and just use that. But if you want to leave your Linux partition a bit smaller for right now and just try it out, you can do that. Though keep in mind that if you want to install things like games, those can be quite big and take up a lot of that space. So we want to install now, and it's going to pop up, I believe, with a confirmation. Here it is. And it's going to tell you before you can select a new partition size, I have to be written to disk. You cannot undo this operation. So I'm going to hit continue. All right, and it's going to ask you if you want to write all these changes to disk. If you click continue, this is where it's going to start doing everything here. So it's going to ask you, while it's working on this, it's going to start asking you things like your time zone. So I'm just going to leave it on Chicago. It's going to ask you for a name and a username. So I'm just going to pick Fash, and then I'm going to make up a super secure password. If you're going to be using this for real, make up an actual password. Don't do what I'm doing here. You can pick your computer's name as well, which is the host name. So I'm just going to call this Mini because it's Mini PC. But yeah, make sure to enter something that's not this. We'll just click continue, and it's going to come up with this. And you'll notice it's already like halfway through because it was running in the background while we were setting that up. Almost finished copying files. Oh, that's right. It does go through a couple of steps, so it may take a little bit longer, but it's going to give you some slides about the system. So you can listen to music, obviously, all the basic stuff. It's pretty standard stuff that it's going to show you, but it's just going to give you an idea of some of the things you can do and some of the ways you can stay connected, things like that. LibreOffice, pretty solid office suite. If you're looking to get away from Microsoft Office or you're kind of annoyed by it, then it's a solid option to check out. And the Software Center is actually pretty cool too. So be sure to check that out. I'll be showing you that really quick once we reboot. I'll just show you a few things that Linux Mint kind of goes through on the welcome screen, I believe. So VirtualBox and Wine, these are Wine's, I mean, yeah, Wine's great, but like there are better options to use for Wine now, like bottles. They're bottles or potentially running it through Steam or whatever. But you can do a lot more with Windows apps than you used to could. Wine has been getting better and better and better for the last few years. And it's also going to talk about desktop customization. We'll get there because I think it's going to ask us a couple of questions like that when we start. And then keep your system up to date, blah, 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 find help. And that's the end. It's good because we just got to the end of that. So we're going to restart now. It may ask us to remove the drive, may not. Yep, it will. So we're going to remove our flash drive and then press enter. Now we should see a new menu come up and ask us what we want to boot into. Oh, we did not. Okay, that's fine. So if you don't initially see a menu to actually pick what you want to go into, just go back into your boot menu. It's gonna, you should see a Ubuntu entry. That's Linux Mint. Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu. And it's gonna come up with something like this. And then we're gonna say Linux Mint 21. And it'll come up with this and the little splash screen. And then we should be in Linux Mint pretty quick. Enter your password that you made up, hopefully more secure than mine. And here we go. So now we get our welcome screen. It's gonna ask us it's gonna walk us through a few things. So the first step, we're gonna have to pick a desktop color. You can pick these different colors and that'll kind of you can see the accent changes a little bit. It's gonna ask you for light or dark mode. I'm gonna immediately switch to dark mode. You prefer light? I don't know what kind of masochist you are, but go for it. It's also gonna ask you for a panel layout. And I'm gonna pick modern. If you pick classic, it's gonna look a little bit different, but notice it's basically whether you wanna have icons down here or you wanna have the full application name out beside it. I'm gonna pick modern because I like that look a little better. It saves you some room for other things. It's also gonna prompt you to set up snapshots. I'm gonna launch this, but I'm not gonna actually set these up, but I would encourage you to do so. And it's gonna ask you how you wanna do this. You'll just go through this and it'll ask you what you kind of wanna do, but I'm just gonna get to this point here. It's gonna ask you what you wanna back up and where. You'll say next. And then it's gonna ask you how often you wanna take snapshots. And then it's gonna ask you what you wanna back up. What you pick here is going to affect what gets backed up. And this is the last part that I'm going to go through because the rest of it, I believe, is actually going to give you a confirmation and probably finish up. Here's where it's going to ask you what you want to actually back up. /root is really important to back up. This is what's actually going to be the big thing when it comes to getting back into the system if an update or something breaks, because you can then use this snapshot to get back in. You want to probably include all files on that. Home is your personal files. These are stuff like your pictures and things like that. This could be something else that you potentially want to back up. It's just a matter of how big you want this backup to be. But if you hit next, it's gonna tell you the setup is complete and it's going to start backing it up. I didn't think it was actually gonna do that. But anyway, I'm going to stop this now because I don't want to actually start this. Next up here, you'll see this driver manager. Again, if this is something where you have an NVIDIA card or some other kind of hardware that you think a Linux may have a driver for, this would be really good to use here. And then multimedia codecs, if you don't have those installed, you probably want those again. I will say that. Update manager. This is where you're going to be able to set up automatic updates. So if I just launch this, it's going to ask you to see about those. I'm not going to run these right now, but I would encourage you to go through and set those up, or at least think about it. And then you can also look at the system settings, and this is a quick way to get to it. And so you can see a lot of different settings here, including like your backgrounds, your effects, and all that. You can also get to a lot of them through the right click right here. So you can right click and customize, I believe. Yeah, you can get to icon size and some other stuff like that here. And then you can also get to display settings, change background, add desk lists, etc. by right clicking anywhere blank on the desktop. But I would encourage you to kind of look through here and see what ultimately might make sense for what you may want to do. The next thing is Software Manager. So I want to bring this up and show you a few things that you can actually install from here. It may take it a moment to come up the first time, but you can see here some of the applications right away, like Krita. That's a drawing app that you can use. Audacity is a very common audio editing app. But let's search for a few things here. Let's search for OBS. So here's OBS Studio. Here's Obsidian. Here's another OBS Studio. That is a main package. I don't think you'd want that version. You probably want the FlatHub version. Let's see. Yeah, this is 27.2. You don't want that. So you want this FlatHub version here. FlatHub is a repository for a package type called Flatpaks, and Flatpaks are able to install on basically any Linux distribution as long as you install Flatpak support first. But Flatpaks can be really nice for certain applications. OBS is one of them that it works out pretty well for. Another thing you can actually get here, I think it is Discord. So here is Discord, but you can generally go and search for whatever application you think you want to find, and you can see what it has. If you just search for like Markdown, it'll try to find stuff related to Markdown. So Obsidian, MarkText, Typora. It's got a bunch of different Markdown options here. Let's just install OBS just so you can see what this looks like. But all you do is come in here, you click install. It's going to say additional software will be installed and let you know what that is. And you'll just click continue. These Flatpaks may be a little bit slower to install, but the nice thing is they have all of their dependencies separately. So if you've ever had to install something on Windows where you've had this weird dependency thing going on, that can be an annoyance. Flatpaks are one way that Linux attempts to solve that. It should run pretty quickly, and then it should just come up and be available to install. And we should actually find it here in the start menu as well once we... All right, and now that it's done, you should see the install button here, the launch button, rather. And instead, I'm just going to click the Windows key, and you'll see this menu come up. If I just type OBS, you should see it right there. And I can launch OBS Studio. And there we go. Cancel. The Software Center is pretty solid here in Mint. You can also go to documentation in the next set and get some of the new features, release notes, documentation, all that. You can also look for help. The web forums, the Linux Mint web forums have been pretty helpful. I still occasionally end up going there for an issue I'm searching for because I'll have somebody asking the same question. And then finally, they'll have a contribute button, and they'll give you options on ways you can contribute to the project. Because while Linux Mint is free, keep in mind it is driven through sponsorships and donations and things like that. And that is important for a group of people that are working really hard on something like this. So you can keep this coming up if you like. If you don't want to have this window come up every time, you can just simply check this, and it will uncheck this rather, and it will stop coming up during startup. If you ever close this and you're like, wait, where is that window? If you just search for welcome, you'll find it and you'll be able to open it up. But everything that's here, even like the update manager, is available in the menu. So it's just a more convenient way, especially for newer people, to find some of this. Or maybe you want to change your accent colors, and you want to go orange. Then you can easily do that from this menu. Despite what it may seem, I actually think running Linux is a lot easier for some people than they think it's going to be. My parents ran Linux for about a year and a half and didn't really have any issues. The only thing they had me do was I needed to add some icons to the desktop because that's the way they were used to driving a computer. But after that, they just kind of ran with it and it worked. To me, the coolest thing about Linux is it can be as deep as you want it to be. Do you just want to use a browser and mostly just surf the web and play solitaire or something like that, and maybe occasionally watch YouTube? Great, you can do that. If you want to dive in and use the terminal all the time and work on finding all these crazy applications out there that are in the terminal only that are written in Rust, you can do that too. Linux is something that is really cool to me because ultimately it gives you a lot of choice that you never knew you could have. There are things you can do like tiling window managers where it's a completely different workflow than Windows. There are other desktop environments that can have a lot of different workflows than Windows. There are ways you can set things up to look like Windows, but it's all about the ability to have that choice and also do that on a system that's going to respect your privacy, and you can actually look at the code and audit the code if you want to. I'm Vashinator. If you like this video, consider clicking the like button or even subscribing to the channel. I talk about Linux and open source software and occasionally coding, and really my goal is to help you be able to take control of your tech. So thanks for watching, have a great day, and I will see you next time.